there, and welcome to Doctor Who Radio Show. And that's the way it goes. And in the very first of a new regeneration of Doctor Who Radio Show, this is a prelude to both Asylum of the Daleks and Season 7 of Doctor Who. And this is...
Ian Nieves, better known as Slugcorp. I run Slugcorp Media.
And, well, after several changes of date by the BBC, they finally set on a date of the 1st of September, this coming Saturday. So, Slugcorp, what do you think we will see in Asylum of the Daleks and also the rest of the episodes?
Well, let me first say that Stephen Moffat has been listening to everyone very carefully. Anyone who said anything about Doctor Who, he has been listening. So, he is prepared to give us exactly what we want. So I expect this to be a very good episode indeed.
Ah, yes. It does say in the synopsis, but it features every kind of Dalek seen so far from every era of the show. So, in itself, a sort of 50th anniversary story.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of Daleks, at least.
Let me also say this. Stephen Moffat, he is very good at making his show look good in the first few episodes. But as we saw in Series 6, the previous series, the episodes started to decline a little, and they were kind of all over the place as how good they were. But I'm just hoping that we can see something better this season. And, yeah.
The Doctor's Wife was one of the more standout episodes, I think you agree. I mean, to both new fans and also fans of the classic series. Plus the junkyard full of broken TARDIS consoles, etc. was glorious, and the building of a new TARDIS console was something you don't usually see in Doctor Who, classic or new, really.
No, that was really out of the box. It's just a shame that Stephen Moffat did not write that episode. It was Neil Gaiman, who is a very good writer, and I don't mean any offense by that, but he is a very good writer.
That does seem to be the same with Russell T Davies's. You know, the best stories are written, really, with people who have a different perspective, who want to put a different emphasis on, you know, the Doctor, or a nice spin on the Daleks or something, you know what I mean, sort of, because the problem with being a producer and also a writer like Russell T Davies and now Moffat is that they perhaps sometimes lose that alternative perspective, if you see what I mean.
Yes, I do see what you mean.
It can't be much coincidence, really. I mean, I like Stephen Moffat's stories, but compared to the ones he did when he wasn't producer, such as Blink, they were far more fresher and felt less stressed out, if you like.
Well, that is exactly what I was about to say. You beat me to it. It is true.
Writing.
Yes. I think it's a universal thing, and I know we're going slightly off topic with this, but when President Obama went into office, he sort of got more stressed. You could see the gray hairs, the wrinkles in his forehead. But while he was a candidate, he was doing great. Or when he was beginning to be a president, he was doing brilliantly. However, right now, he's sort of slowed down a bit. And it's the same with Stephen Moffat. It was the same with Russell T Davies. And to be honest, I don't really have high hopes for this season at all.
Blimey, that's rather blunt.
Well, I'm sorry, but he did such a good job at getting rid of the old Daleks, and now we see them coming back out of the trailer, and it's a mess.
Blimey.
It is
I think I have to agree with that. There was a lot of criticism, not necessarily about Victory of the Daleks as a story, because I thought that idea was fantastic, and the idea that the Doctor's desire to shout his name at the rooftops was actually a rather good trap by the Daleks. But the problem is, when the new Prime Daleks appeared, they looked a little bit sort of, well, there's been lots of descriptions really. Either they're sort of Mighty Morphin Power Ranger Daleks, Teletubby Daleks, or quite simply, in my view, look like Daleks on steroids, you know. And I don't know. just seemed... I like the idea of each Dalek having a role like the Eternal Dalek, because that sounds precisely how the Daleks think, sort of bee mentality, beehive mentality. But the design of it seemed a bit ridiculous. From the look of it, they're actually addressing that mistake. So perhaps, really, those Daleks in Victory were merely a sort of stop point to the new paradigm of Daleks, neither old or new. Although, from the sound of it, Asylum with the Daleks is literally going to be Asylum with the Daleks. And as I've mentioned to other people, in the episode Parting of the Ways, the Emperor Dalek was pointing out, and the actions of the Daleks, under his command, treated him like, a god. There's a bit where all the Daleks are going, do not blaspheme, do not blaspheme, and the Ninth Doctor himself did say they've gone all mad. So perhaps that's going to be an extension of it, because there is always, and there always has been, an element really of the Daleks' fascist ideals, which is, when they first appeared, it was only like 20 years since the end of the Second World War, so they were a science fiction creation based on the Nazis. You have the plunger going upwards, you have exterminate is what they wanted to do to the Jews. So really, in a sense, they've always been mad. But perhaps this is a case that they've finally realised it themselves.
Well, that's not going to happen. Steven obviously wants to keep the Doctor Who Enterprise going, and he would not do something that would harm it in any way. Now, what you've just said would undoubtedly lead to the downfall of those Daleks. However, Steven doesn't want to do that. He wants to keep the Daleks in the ball game as long as he can. So, I think, if what you said is true, Steven will undoubtedly keep a certain amount of Daleks sane so they can battle the insane ones, and then there will be a big mess and the Doctor will have to probably blow everything up. Yeah, that's going to be the first story in a nutshell, right there.
Well, in the trailer, though, they're asking the Doctor to save them. And I think it's possible that they're asking the Doctor to save them from the expansion, the contamination of this insanity. And it has happened before. There was infighting amongst Daleks in Eve of the Daleks. There was infighting amongst them in Remembrance of the Daleks. There was a disease that infected Daleks called the Mavellan virus in both Destiny and Resurrection of the Daleks. So this is another thing. Whenever something like this happens to the Daleks, it's always something which they don't have the ability to fight against. And it's always something which is either a virus or some sort of mental issue.
Yes, I agree with you. But I also think later on in the series, I'm sorry if I'm veering away from episode 1, but later on in the series we will see the old Tom Baker TARDIS returning.
Ooh.
Because in the trailer, Amy and Rory were in a white room, and they said, and Rory said, so exactly how much trouble are we in? And the Doctor walks in escorted by a couple of Daleks, and he says, out of 10, 11. And we all get that joke. What really gets my goat is that the Doctor has let Daleks into the TARDIS, and that can only mean one thing, an alliance against the more powerful Daleks.
I've been wondering, actually, there's one curious thing. When Rory in the trailer is saying, who's killed all these Daleks, the Doctor says, who do you think? And that just automatically made me imagine that it was the 7th Doctor, somebody, making an appearance. Because bear in mind, each season since 2005, since the series returned, has had a story arc. And what would be the one overriding factor in the 50th anniversary but multi-Doctor story type story arc? And since, doing a multi-Doctor story is kind of not really practical, or perhaps, Moffat's pointed out he doesn't really want to do that. What better way than to have them appear as part of a long-running story arc, making appearances. So they, from their point of view, it would be a story themselves, and from the 11th Doctor's point of view, It'd be his story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. If they do that, I have a special request. Tell Stephen Moffat right now. Please bring back Tom Baker.
Please bring back Paul McGann. Give us an explanation for how the 8th Doctor regenerated into the 9th, or at least how it started.
Yes. I also want to know a bit more about Christopher Eccleston's Doctor. How did that happen?
Well, they never actually showed it, did they?
No, who knows if Christopher Eccleston is the 9th Doctor? He could be the 12th Doctor. In fact, I think that what's going to happen is that the Doctor will have his memory erased, and then he will regenerate into Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, and he will think he's the 9th Doctor. The whole thing happens all over again, like a paradox.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because in the story The Brain of Morbius, the Doctor and Morbius, who was exiled, renegade, executed Time Lord, by the way, actually have a mind battle. And in that, you see several different personas before William Hartnell's first Doctor. The suggestion and the implication being that the Doctor might have had many, many personas beforehand.
Judging by what we've all seen, what is your expectations for episode 1?
Well, I think Asylum of the Daleks will have a few hints which will seem more relevant in later episodes. In terms of what I've seen so far, a parliament of Daleks, like perhaps the last true great corner of the universe where Daleks exist in a huge and mass. Yeah, because bear in mind, the Doctor's defeated them so many times that logically their species should be greatly depleted. And I think that's the whole point. Every story, according to Moffat, is supposed to be like a big movie, which makes up for the fact that there won't actually be 13 episodes, each season. But what there will be is a movie per episode, per film, if you like, where you'll have little hints and echoes of the past while also looking forward to the future. And a good example of this, The Angels Take Manhattan, the final story featuring the Pond. From the look of it, Power 3, which was originally called Q, might be a follow-on from the story The Doctor's Wife. And Power 3 obviously refers to the Doctor, Rory, and Amy Pond. Because, of course, that's their final, penultimate story before they, either die or something even worse.
I am going to make another prediction. I believe that Amy and Rory will retire and nothing bad will happen to them. Now, I'm sorry, guys, but I believe this will happen because Amy and Rory are lovable characters, and Stephen Moffat would never do something that kids love. And also, Amy River's song, when we see her in the trailer, she looks happy and calm. Now, if her parents had just died, she would be pissed. But no.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah. If she'd seen Rory and Amy die, since they're her parents, you should have seen her looking like she was in mourning or something.
Right, but no. She's smiling, she's running around straight at angels and stuff, and, that sums it all up. So, unless
she... Now, bear in mind, River Pond...
Yes?
Melody Pond, whatever name she goes by and whatever part of her own personal timeline, which is back to front when it comes to the Doctor, she sort of has knowledge of the Doctor before it's even happened. So if she's known about the demise of her parents for a long time anyway, then she wouldn't be upset, because to her it's simply a part of what will happen no matter what.
Good point. I did not think of that.
Do you think there's going to be any surprises which have been kept on the wrap in the first story?
I doubt that the surprises will be very big, because in last season, the Tesselector saved the Doctor, and we all thought, it's either going to be the Flesh or the Tesselector. Now, it turned out to be the Tesselector, and everyone hated the Flesh anyway, so...
That's kind of a letdown,
I don't
really,
think the surprises are going to be very big.
Sort of solution to the Doctor dying. I thought that was a little bit of a cop-out. Do you think we might see them again? Because some characters have in the last few years returned, such as the Silurian lesbians, from A Good Man Goes to War. They're making a return in future episodes.
Yes. I'm not sure if they're lesbians.
We can only hope.
And oddly enough, there's actually a mini-sode thing on the BBC Doctor Who website called Pond Life, which is like really short. Basically, the Doctor sending telephone messages to the ponds. A couple of years ago, they had TARDIS sodes during David Tennant's first season. So that's sort of expanding on. That's the great thing about recent Doctor Who, isn't it, really? You sort of have little mini episodes that sort of flesh out, preludes or epilogues, if you like. Speaking of the ponds and the Doctor, of course, there's also the other stories. Episode 2, Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. What do you think of that?
Well, I expect it to be a Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones kind of thing, because in the trailer we see that it looks just like Jurassic Park. There's a guy who looks just like Indiana Jones, and I suspect he's going to be flirting with Amy Pond, who is quite attractive, by the way, and Rory will get jealous instead of the other way around when Amy got jealous of Jennifer, the Flash, in the Rebel Flash. So Stephen Moffat is obviously switching the roles here.
The problem is, though, from the title, Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, it does sound like, oh god, this is going to be rubbish. And the last Dinosaurs story they had in Doctor Who was way back at the very end of the John Pertwee era, which was Invasion of the Dinosaurs. And it's famous for the simple fact that they originally hired a independent production team, I think, or something like that, and they couldn't deliver. They sort of delivered really bad sort of models, and the final result wasn't too good either. It just seems very much like the situation that you had with Go in the Fireplace. Sort of very unusual thing. You had a horse on a spaceship. I don't know, it just seems a bit corny to me. It's just, you're right, the trailer did make it look like Jurassic Park, but from a sort of human type thing with Queen Nefertiti, or whatever her name is, and an Edwardian explorer played by Rupert Graves, I believe. Plus, also, for the first time, Rory's dad, isn't it?
Rory's dad?
Yeah. Brian, played by Mark Williams, who's from the Fast Show in England.
Dinosaurs on a Spaceship to be one of those humorous episodes now, because as we all know, Rory is like the comic relief. So now we have Rory's dad in the equation, and we've got an Indiana Jones romance thing when it's supposed to be a sci-fi thing, and I think this is going to be one of those more comedic Doctor Who episodes, instead of one of those serious, villainous Doctor Who episodes that we all enjoy.
Well, it's written by Chris Chibnall, who's written other Doctor Who stories for the new series, and from what I've seen from Mark Williams in the UK, really well known, but in the USA it's not so well known. But I think it should be interesting. Will Rory's dad be anything like, Rory?
While we're making predictions, I predict that Rory's dad will urge Rory to get Amy back from Indiana Jones or whoever the hell we're dealing with, and Rory will be annoyed by his dad and pissed by the fact that Amy is probably going to be dating another guy, which is quite Rose Tyler, if you ask me.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because from what I've read, there's supposed to be strife in the Pond's life. There's supposed to be elements of a possible divorce. Then there's The Town Called Mercy by Toby Rithouse, who last year wrote The God Complex, one of the more interesting and oddly 1980s feeling episodes. In the Wild West, no less.
I don't think that Toby Whithouse did a very good job with the God Complex.
Oh? How come?
Because it left a lot of questions unanswered. What was behind the door, number 11, that the Doctor opened? Why is he ditching Amy and Rory now? Why this, why that? And why couldn't he have used the Weeping Angels so that they were the main villains instead of some bloody Minotaur? It was good, but it wasn't good enough.
I have to admit, just like Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, I thought Town Called Mercy looked like, well, RoboCop meets Gunfight at the O Corral. And you know, it's got two sort of styles which don't entirely, when you look at the trailer at least, look good. But you know, I haven't seen the episode, so for I know it could be good. Otherwise it could be just a load of, well, crap. I'm rather pleased that you mentioned the whole point of the Doctor wanting to ditch the ponds, because he did say in the last series that he felt like if it wasn't for the fact that he'd met them, they wouldn't have gone through so much. You know, Rory wouldn't have died several times, Amy wouldn't have had the whole business with Melody Pond. And I think many elements in this series and last series all link in to the departure. So it does seem to me that particularly Melody Pond stories and stories where you, well, let's face it, I'm quite sure the introduction of Rory's dad is rather important. That must be a harbinger of doom. So what do you think, from all the story titles and everything you know, do you think this is going to be like a story arc within itself, you know, leading up to, of course, Weeping Angels in Manhattan, the final encounter with the Weeping Angels, if that's to be believed?
I can only hope so, because if not, we're screwed, okay? Let's face it, David, there's not gonna be a season if Moffat keeps clowning around. In fact, I highly doubt that this will not be their last adventure. This will be the Doctor's last adventure until the movie comes out. So, I'm sorry if I'm being pessimistic, that's just how I feel about it.
So it might be the old no more Weeping Angels after this, said Mr. Moffat. It might just be another one of his, because let's face it, he does do this a lot. He's, you know, tall stories, so to speak.
Yeah.
I don't like that about Moffat. I don't like the fact that he comes out with statements which then turn out to be poodoo, basically. Although, if it was the last appearance of the Weeping Angels, what better way? It'd be like end of an era, particularly for the Ponds. And you know, they are, you know, the Ponds and the Weeping Angels are characters from the early years, if you like, of Matt Smith's Doctor. So what better way to sort of get rid of them that way? And I think it's fair to say that after Blink, they weren't used as well.
Well, I have to agree with you there. Well, Stephen Moffat doesn't like what we're doing right now. He doesn't like people speculating on what is going to happen. And you know we're probably right about what's going to happen in Series 7. So, we're just pissing him off.
Stephen Moffat has made a few comments, particularly in the last 6 months, which really are sort of anti-Doctor Who fans. You know, like we spoke about earlier, him being a little bit stressed out, I think he's starting to get a little bit irritated maybe by criticism, and also people spoiling some of the surprises.
Well, I can't agree with you more, you know. The guy obviously has his knickers in a twist, so to speak.
Oh, blimey, that's a good one. As any birthday party, and the people going to those birthday parties will tell you, unfortunately we've eaten all our cake. So until then, That's the Way It Goes, bidding you adieu.
And I'm Slugcorp. Subscribe to my channel, please.
And until next time, keep hooing.